Welcome to the 17th tutorial of my Tableau Server Client series. This series is dedicated to showcasing how to use Tableau Server Client to automate various tasks. In this video, I will walk you through how to create, update, and delete groups maintained on your Tableau Server or Tableau Cloud instance using Tableau Server Client. To create a group on your Tableau Server or Tableau Cloud instance, you will need to create a group object or item. When creating the group object, you will need to specify the name and, optionally, the minimum site role and license mode. To update an existing group, you simply need to specify the group object and corresponding attributes or properties you would like to update. In most instances, you will not have memorized the group's locally unique identifier value, so I recommend first fetching the group object to get the necessary value for updating the group. The same applies for deleting a group. To showcase each type of request, let us jump over to Visual Studio Code to begin developing a script that creates a new group on my Tableau Cloud instance, updates the same group's minimum site role, and finally deletes that group. Okay, to start off this exercise, we'll run this initial block here that's responsible for configuring our authentication object. This authentication object is going to allow us to sign in and authenticate to my Tableau Cloud instance. Let's go ahead and run this. Also, if you're unfamiliar with this block of code here, I highly recommend you check out tutorial 2 of this series. In that tutorial, I walk you through connecting to your Tableau server or Tableau Cloud instance for the first time. All right, our first task here that we want to complete in this tutorial is we want to be able to create a group on my Tableau server or Tableau Cloud instance. In this case, it's a cloud instance. Let's take a look at my cloud instance very quickly. Basically, what we want to do is we want to send a command to my cloud instance saying, hey, create this group. And this is where the group would be populated. The manual way of doing this is to come to add group, local group. You may be adding a group that's driven by Active Directory, but in this case, we're going to do a local group. So you click local group, you type in the name, you choose whether you want to grant a specific role on sign in, and then choose that role. Now let's do this programmatically. So I'm going to jump back to Visual Studio Code, and let's tackle this using code. So in this code block here, I'm going to use a context manager to sign in using my authentication object, and we're going to make sure we're using the most recent REST API version that's supported by my Tableau Cloud instance's version. What we want to do for this first task is, again, we want to create a group. So I'm just going to say configure new group. And what we'll do for this task is we're going to set the minimum site role and license mode based on a particular scenario. And that scenario is going to be that we want the minimum site role to be none, so not populated, and we want the license mode to also be none. All right, so to create a new group, what we're going to say is new group is equal to tsc.groupItem. So this is going to be a group object. We're going to say name. What are we going to call this? I'm going to call this North America Sales Team. So it's going to be a group dedicated to North America Sales Team users. All right, and then in order to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run this, and then we're going to look at this group here, the attributes available for this group. So let's go new group, underscore dict. You'll notice these are the attributes so far. So because I haven't technically created this group, the ID is none, so the locally unique identifier is none. The license mode is none. Site role is none. Users none. There's no users associated with this group because I haven't created it yet. But we do have a name. This is the value we provided. What we're also going to do is, by default, I'm going to go ahead and just say new group dot minimum site role is equal to none, and I'm going to say new group dot license mode is equal to none. So these will be the default values if you create a group without specifying these attribute values. So as you saw already, license mode and minimum site role are by default none. I'm just showcasing this here for example because what we're going to do later on in this tutorial is we're going to update the group's properties to have a different site role and a different license mode. All right, so let's continue. So we have a new group, and that new group looks like this, North America Sales Team. So how do we actually send this request to create this group on the server? What we're going to do is we're going to use the create method that's part of the groups endpoint. And what I'll do is I'll use a try except block for this as well. All right, so what are we going to try? We're going to try to use the groups endpoint to create a group. And which group are we going to create? So I'm going to say group item. So it's a keyword argument. Group item is equal to new group. And that new group is, again, that's going to be the North America sales team group. And then what we're going to do, we're going to say accept. So if any exception is caught, this creation of the group is going to fail. So I'm going to do a bare accept here. I'm going to say print. Let's do fstring unable to create new group .name. And what that's going to print out is it's going to say unable to create North America sales team in the case that there is an actual error raised. Else, we're going to say print, and we'll say new group .name successfully created. All right, let's go ahead and run this. All right, so we successfully created the North America sales team. What I want to show here now is let's jump back over to my Tableau Cloud instance to verify that this was actually the case. So I haven't refreshed this page yet, but let's go ahead and do that. Refresh the page, and now we see North America sales team. So this is a group on my cloud instance that's been created using the API, so Python and Tableau Server Client. We have 0 users in there, and that's not important to us. What we're going to do is we're going to jump back over to Visual Studio Code, and we're actually going to run an update request on here. So we're going to update this group. And what are we going to do when we update this group? I'm actually just going to update the minimum site role for this group. Let's go ahead and delete this block. And to do that, we're going to just go ahead and just use the same authentication block here. I'm going to sign into my server, use the most recent API supported by my Tableau Cloud instance, and then update that particular group. But what we want to do here is we want to update a specific group, right? We want to update all groups, just a specific group. So how do I update just a specific group? Well, there are a few options. One, I need to have the locally unique identifier associated with the group on hand. 2, another way of doing this is to actually add a filter request initially that's going to return just that group, so the North America sales team, and then modify that, and then use the update method to update the minimum site role. So let me showcase how that might work. So I'm going to say create a group filter for the update request. And to do that, we're going to use request options. So we say request options is equal to tsc.request options. So we have a request options object. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a filter to that. And we're going to filter on the group name. And the operator we're going to use is the equals operator. We're going to say, give me the group with a name equal to North America sales team. And this needs to be character for character correct, and it's case sensitive, so keep that in mind whenever you're using this method. All right, so we have our request options filter. This is going to be passed along with the request to get the group. All right, so what are we going to do? So we're going to send this filtering request to retrieve a specific group, and what we're going to do is we're going to use a if-else block to say, if the group exists, it's a valid group, it exists on my server or my cloud instance, let's go ahead and update that group. Otherwise, say group not found. So we'll use the groups endpoint, and we're going to say get, and then our get request is going to be those request options. So the get request is, when using request options, it's going to return a tuple. That tuple is going to contain a list of the groups retrieved. In that case, it should be a list of the single group. And it will contain another item, which is a pagination item. In this case, we want to basically say, hey, was a group returned using this request? If so, so we're using this Pythonic way of saying if is the list basically not empty, right? So if the list is not empty and it contains that group we were filtering for or trying to retrieve, then let's go ahead and update the group. Otherwise, again, say the group was not found. So we're going to say group is equal to server.groups.get request options. And we're accessing that list of groups returned, and it's going to be the first, the group in the first index, because we are looking for a specific group by a particular name. So we're going to say the group is equal to that. So that's going to be a group object like we previously created up here. It's going to have the same attributes maintained as you previously saw up here. Okay, so group is equal to that. And we're going to just go ahead and write this out. So update the group's minimum site role attribute to reflect viewer. So previously, whenever we looked at this group, the minimum site role was none, so it's not specified. We're going to update that to actually reflect the viewer value. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's do try. We're going to say server.groups.update group item. So again, another keyword argument. And we're going to say is equal to group. So again, group is the North America sales team group that we previously created on our Tableau Cloud instance. Except print. So in the instance that there is an issue with this update request, we're going to say unable to update the minimum site role for that particular group, or to the site role specified. In this case, it's user or viewer, sorry. Unable to update the min site role to group.minimum sites role. Okay. And if everything succeeds, we're going to say print. And I need an F string here. The min site role was successfully updated to viewer, and for which group. So group.name. So we're going to use the name attribute maintained for the group, which is going to be North America Sales Team. And then here's a key part here that we're going to say print group not found. So the only way that we're going to actually execute this else block is in the case that this filtering request does not work, right? So in the case that the North America Sales Team group does not exist on our Tableau server or Tableau Cloud instance, that this will occur. So we'll print out group not found. Otherwise, we're going to update the group, and the update we're going to make is that the minimum site role is going to be viewer. But in order to do that, right? So in order to do that, I actually need to specify that update, right? So I need to say group.minimum site role. So what are we updating? We're going to update this minimum site role attribute for that group. And I'm going to say equals viewer. Okay. And let's just go ahead and put this here. All right, so we have our block of code that's going to allow us to authenticate. So we're going to sign in, authenticate. We're going to use the most recent API version supported. We're going to create a filter that we're going to pass in with our GET request. That GET request is going to return a tuple, and in the first index is going to be a list of objects returned. So in this case, groups. There should be only one group because we filtered for one group by name. And in the second, so we're going to access the first index in that list of groups, and that's going to be our group. And in that tuple, again, the second item in that tuple is a pagination item, which we are going to ignore. We do not need that here because we're not paginating, right? We only have one group. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. It says the minimum site role was successfully updated to viewer for North America Sales Team. Let's go ahead and verify that again using the same method we used previously by checking my Tableau Cloud server. So here, whenever we first made the create request, we created this North America Sales Team group, and we did not specify a minimum site role. We used none. Let's go ahead and refresh this. And so now we'll see that the site role has been updated to viewer. So that worked as intended. In the final step, let's go ahead and jump to the Visual Studio Code. And in this final step, we're going to delete this group. To delete a group, we need to specify the group item that we want to delete from the server. In this case, we also need the item. Right, so we're going to need to retrieve the group item from the server that we want to delete, or we need to know in advance that locally unique identifier. All right, we used the filter request previously. I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this because I don't want to make this a typing exercise, and I know you don't want to watch me type. So we're going to filter for the same group, and whenever we retrieve that group, we're going to try to delete that group given its group ID. That's all we need. So let's go ahead and try this. Just server.groups.get. And what I'm going to do is, because I've already typed this out too, I'm going to basically just copy and paste that as well. So if it exists, if the request returns a group, we're going to go ahead and say group and I need to copy and paste this as well. So let's just copy and paste this. So if the group exists, take that group item that's in the first item of that tuple, so the first index of that tuple, and store it in group. So this is going to ultimately be our group item. So if I were to run this, right, let's go ahead and run this so we can see what that looks like. And let's just take a look at group. Right, so group is a group item or a group object. It has a local unique identifier now of this. It has a license mode of on login, that's the default, and it has a minimum site role of viewer and a name of North America sales team. So we have the right group, and what do we want to do? We want to delete this. So we're going to say try server.groups.delete, and we're going to say group ID is equal to group.id. So what we're doing here is we're passing in the ID value or attribute for this particular group we retrieved, which is also shown here. We're going to try to delete that. And if there's an exception raised, we're going to say print unable to delete group.name. So this will print out unable to delete North America sales team. Else okay, so if the deletion request goes through successfully, we're going to say successfully deleted the group from the server. And if we don't find the group in the first place, we're going to print group not found. Okay, so just to walk through this from top to bottom, we sign in, just as before. We create a filter request that's going to be used, passed in with our GET request, which is going to allow us to retrieve the North America sales team group object or item if it exists. So if it exists, then we're going to go ahead and try to delete that group using the group ID value that's populated or maintained for that item or object. If there's an exception raised, we're going to specify or indicate or provide feedback that we were unable to delete it. If it's successful, we're going to state the same. We're going to say that we were successfully able to delete the group from the server. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. And we have this message saying that we successfully deleted North America sales team from the server. Let's verify that again on the Tableau server, or in this case, the cloud instance. So we see this group exists. Now let's go ahead and refresh, and we should see that they no longer exist on my cloud instance. And there we have it. That group has been removed from my cloud instance. Now, what I want to talk about briefly here is when might you find this useful? So you're most likely never going to create a group, subsequently update it, and then finally delete it all in one go, right? You're most likely going to do bulk creation of groups, right? You might have an Excel file that you create a pandas data frame in, you read it in, you put it in a pandas data frame, and then you create multiple groups in bulk, right? As opposed to using that front end method that I showed you earlier where you have to hand type each group name, then you have to specify a few options. You might create a bunch of groups in bulk, right? So for example, I have North America sales team, right? We created that group now. What if I wanted a sales team for each region for which my company operates? Well, I could create a nice list of group names in an Excel file or a CSV, read that in using pandas, and then create each of those groups programmatically without having to use the front end, right? Same thing here, updating properties. If I want to do bulk updates, I could specify the type of update in the Excel spreadsheet or CSV along with the corresponding group that I wanted to update. Same thing with deletes. I could specify all the groups that I wanted to bulk delete and do those in one go, right? Programmatically, as opposed to spending all that time on the server, doing all these checkboxes saying I want to delete the group. This is definitely the way to do it, right? Save time and hundreds, if not thousands of clicks, depending on what you're trying to do. All right. One last thing before we wrap up this video, I do want to showcase where you can find these some nearly ready to go scripts online. If you check out my GitHub, you're going to find these scripts, but they're going to be what I would say in quotes, nearly ready to go. Basically, if we look at these 3 scripts, they're segmented, they're separate. So you create group, delete group, update group. So if you want to create groups, well, you can come in here and you can take this code. It's a nice little starter template. Basically, it includes the packages or libraries that you need. So keyring, in my case, I use keyring to store and retrieve my token values. Obviously, Tableau Server Client. You're going to have some starter code that allows you to create that authentication object. Obviously, you need to change your token name and your site ID, and maybe even the way you store and retrieve your token values. But it's going to have code here that's going to allow you to sign in, and then you're going to replace this piece, right, with the group that you want to create, and maybe even the attributes that you want to modify or specify on creation. So it's all here. These are all really good starting points for you to start automating these tasks on your Tableau Server or Tableau Cloud instance. So again, we have delete group, update group, and these scripts are just a step away from doing bulk or updates in bulk, right? Whether you want to update a ton of groups, delete groups, create groups, you simply have to provide the means, so a file or a list to iterate over, and then for each of those groups to either, say update, delete, or create. Okay, so that's enough about my GitHub. If you're curious about this GitHub, it is coding on Windows OS. Check it out. There will also be a link in the comment section of this video. Okay, that wraps up this video on modifying groups programmatically through Tableau Server Client. I hope you found this tutorial useful and can use the concepts I've covered to level up your ability to manage your own Tableau Server or Tableau Cloud instance through automation. If you enjoyed this video, then please like the video and subscribe to my channel for notifications on future videos. Thank you again, and see you next time.